We are continuing with the Rabbinic Prohibitions, the Toldos of Shmita, just like there are Toldos and Shabbos. There are secondary prohibitions that come out of the primary prohibitions of Shabbos. There are 39 primary prohibitions. And at one point, the Gemara says each primary prohibition on Shabbos has 39 Toldos. We don't have as many Toldos on Shmita, but there are a significant number. And we've gotten up to ניכוש. And ניכוש is weeding, but there are several ways of weeding. ניכוש is pulling up the plant and removing the roots as well. The next one is kisuach, which is cutting off the top of the weed, leaving the roots in the ground. So the Rambam says in Hilchos Shabbos concerning weeding is that החורש שהוא חייב, that plowing any amount, it doesn't matter, there's no shiur for it, there's no, you can do this much and you're not liable to death penalty. Any amount would be liable to death penalty, or if it were done without being aware of Shabbos, having to bring a carbon. Hamanachesh B'ikray Elanos, if you're weeding at the base of trees, והמקרסם העשבים, or you're doing this with grasses, herbs, or המזרד השריגim, more different types of plants, כדי ליפות הקרקע, and this is done so that the ground is better for growing the plants that you're leaving that you want. Toldos חורש, this is a secondary prohibition coming out of חורש, out of plowing, which of course is plowing is also is also a primary prohibition on Shmita. ומשיעשה שהוא חייב, when you do any small amount, you are liable, and the prohibition has been done. The zerua, when he is looking at this issue, he says, הזורע, planting, אתמר המנכש, והמשקה מים בשבת, משום מה מסרינן בי. When the zerua is talking about the prohibition of planting on Shabbos, he says if you weed or you water with water on Shabbos, what do we warn the person for? In terms of the Hilchos Shabbos, to give a person a death penalty, we have to warn him that what you are doing is prohibited because of this specific av malacha. If I warn him for the wrong av malacha, he's exempt. So what am I supposed to warn him about? Rabba Amar Mishum Khorish. Rabba says I warn him because of plowing. Rav Yosef Amar Mishum Zorah. Rav Yosef says this is planting. Plowing is improving the ground, and planting is making the plant grow better. Amar Rabba. Rabba says Kavase Didi Mistabra. My thing is more logical than yours. My darko shel chores lef we ara. What's the way of plowing as I'm improving the land? Af hanami mirafe ara. Also, this is improving the land. Perush Rashbam, the Rashbam, one of Rashi's grandsons, says the baser ikar hamalacha aslinen. When we're determining which Tolda something follows, we follow what is the basic nature of the av malacha. V'dami l'choresh, and this is more similar to plowing. Aval lo zorea lo dami kla, but it's not similar to planting. Now, plowing, the reason why you plow is so that plants grow better. So you could say that all of plowing is a tolda of planting. Planting, I'm working with the plant. I'm doing something to the plant. In terms of plowing, I'm doing something to the ground, which then will help the plant grow. So that's the primary difference between them. So when I weed by removing the root, which is ניכוש, which is what we're talking about right now, then I'm improving the ground. So the Netziv in a tshuva and Meshiv Davar, Siman Nun Vav, says that we cannot do any type of weeding, removing the roots. We can only do it by chopping off the top of the weed on Shmita. However, the Chazon Ish discusses this in a different way, and he discusses several of the Toldos together. When you're talking about pruning, weeding by removing the roots, fertilizing, and hoeing, in betubuche zahav with oranges. She'etz mefunak me'od. The orange trees are very spoiled, he says. V'hu lefamim nifsad v'yavesh b'mniat tan. And sometimes they can die if we don't do these things for them for a whole year. Tali belugta saposkim. This whole thing, whether we can do these things for it, depends upon a debate among the poskim. They are Ritva Kasa Barosh Moed Katan. The Ritva writes at the beginning of Moed Katan, Tiesh Mefarshim Hada Asra Brisa Nichush, that there are those that explain that when the Brisa prohibits Nichush, the Brisa is something that was a Mishnaic teaching not found in the Mishnah, the Shar Malachos and all of the other Malachos that we're not allowed to do, Hainu Bebeis Abal. This is a field that waters itself. It's a field that I don't have to irrigate. Nira daha Beis Abal Lishna Alma. And when it says Beis Abal, it's just talking approximately. There's no difference between an irrigated field and a non-irrigated field. We're saying it's similar to a field that I don't have to irrigate. Because we're talking about something that will not have a total loss. Meaning, if we're talking about the difference between these fields, if I have a field that I don't need to irrigate, obviously I don't have to do anything, and it will have its water and it will be fine. If I have a field that I have to irrigate, I can have no crop from it if I don't water it. So we're talking about the difference between an absolute loss or a minor loss. But the Ritva writes that if we're talking about a field that if I don't do these things, everything's going to be lost, not just the crop, but the trees, then we're allowed to do these malachos. And then the Chazon Ish says, Upeir shagra mishum pseida shari. The Gra says that if you would suffer a loss from this, it's permitted. Shari Reb Shimon allows it. Ve'afagav de plige Rabbanan, even though there's a machlokas between Reb Shimon and the Rabbanan concerning this, lo mistaber de plige b'yesod isharin and melachat Rabbanan mishum hefsed ele pligi b'hachras shir hefsed. He's saying they're not arguing, the Gaon says, of whether I can do a rabbinic malacha because of loss. The question is how much loss has to be suffered before I can do the malacha. Meaning if it's a minor loss, the rabbis would apparently be more strict and say, no, you can't do it. You have to suffer a minor loss or Shmita. Or, for instance, I can lose this year's crop. But if it's going to be a permanent loss, the tree is going to be permanently damaged or something like that, that would be an entirely different thing. And certainly if the tree would die, that would be a different thing, and I would be allowed to do these because of damage. So, the next malacha that we have to talk about is kisuach. And kisuach is weeding, removing the top of the plant, and this would have to be done many more times. Meaning if you remove the root, the weed doesn't grow back. If I cut off the top, then in a few weeks the weed's going to grow back and I'll have to cut off the top again. So in a certain way, kisuach is desirable because I don't affect the ground as much. On the other hand, they have to do it many times where there is if I do ניכוש, even though it affects the ground more, I have to do it fewer times. But the Chazon Ish writes, the ilanei srak, and trees that do not produce fruit, she'ein rov ha'olon zomerosam. In general, people don't prune them. The reason why we prune trees is we cut off branches that would take energy from the tree and take it away from the fruit so that the fruit grows better. But if we're talking about a tree an oak tree, whatever, why do I have to prune it? It grows how it grows, and it doesn't affect me one way or the other. I'm just using it for shade or something like that. One can wonder whether we say there is a prohibition of pruning at all. When I cut limbs down to use for wood or for any other firewood or any other use, it's clearly permitted. As long as I'm not doing it carefully in such a way as to make something grow better, I'm just cutting wood off. Now, the largest shaila, the most common shaila that you get in Shmita concerning this is mowing a lawn. So Rav Sternbach, in his sefer from the Chazon Ish, where from the Chazon Ish it would seem it's permitted because I'm not getting any fruit out of this, so it's like it's a non-producing thing. So Rav Sternbach writes, "Ketzitzas deshes ladas mumchim einu moel lahavri hatzemach klal." When I cut grass, it's not making it grow better, except at the very beginning, when the lawn is filling in. So if it's umalachas kisuach, when I'm first doing it, when I'm doing it with the lawn that's already developed, it's not similar to pruning. It's not similar to weeding. But it's good to change it a little bit. Cut the lawn a little bit higher, or cut it less often, or something like that. Kamo should be yarnu, like we brought. Hainu bekamos mash tzarech begam b'shinui. If I can do a shinui in the way I cut it, I don't know exactly how you do that with the lawnmowers that we have today, or how often I do it. That would be good. Again, as I said a little bit previously, when you have a brand new lawn that's still filling in, it's different because as I cut it, the roots of the grass spread out and make it thicker, and that's what you want. So if you have a lawn that's still growing, still filling itself in, then there would be an issue of mowing it on Shmita. So make sure your lawn is planted several months before the Shmita begins. The other common discussion that occurs around kisuach is the issue of a hedge that I'm using to divide between property. I use it to look nice and so on. Begeder chai, a hedge that I have, Rav Sternbach writes, shmegadlin b'tzidei habatim, that I grow between houses. I'm not trimming it so it grows more. Adarabba, the reverse. I want it to stay as it is. I don't want it to block my pathways in between my pieces. I'm only doing this so it will be pretty. So it's not called any type of prohibition, and it's permitted on Shmita. There are poskim that say I have to do it in a way that's abnormal, so it's clear that I'm not doing it to improve the hedge. And he says it's good, if possible, to change it in some way. But with a new hedge that hasn't filled in, hasn't become thick yet, then trimming it in this way helps. This helps the living hedge, the living fence, they call it in Hebrew, the hedge to become thicker and more nice. In this case, one should not trim it on Shmita and wait until Shmita is over to take care of things. Everyone should have a wonderful day.